keeping the microphones muted from the field. So if you need to communicate with us, use the chat feature. You can use it to let us know if you're having any technical problems, but also any questions that occur to you during the presentation. We have a good team of staff here, and we'll try to answer any questions that come up. And if any go beyond our expertise, we'll see that they are answered and posted with the Q&A that we'll post to the ODE website next week. 2 years ago, the Ohio Department of Education launched a new process of reviewing and approving vendor assessments for multiple uses by local districts. This new process had several aims. On the ODE side, we were hoping to build consistency, quality, efficiency, and be responsive to district needs. And on the district side, we were looking to meet their need for efficiency and cost savings by looking across the broad field of assessments that we were approving to see if there were places where there were overlaps and where districts could use one test for more than one purpose. These two RFQ processes that we went through sought to combine the application process for 6 assessment areas that we are required to approve. The category of gifted screening and identification breaks down into multiple categories, each of these having specific requirements. The common RFQ process sought 6 different types of instruments for gifted assessment. The current RFQ is limited to 2 types of instruments for which there are currently no approved assessments. So the process that we're going through now is just for the behavioral checklists for visual and performing arts and behavioral checklists for creativity. I just want to say a word about identification versus pre-screening. The gifted identification process involves 2 kinds of test approvals. Pre-screening tests are used to assess all students in a grade to determine if any could potentially be identified as being gifted. These likely students can then be evaluated using a more precise identification instrument for a determination of giftedness. The checklists that we are looking to approve through this process are generally used for identification after students have been screened using other instruments. The behavioral checklists for visual and performing arts have 2 basic quality indicators: that they are endorsed by professional groups or expert review, or publication in mental measurement yearbook or other peer-reviewed journals. We also looked at, clicked in the wrong place. We're also looking for, in the behavioral checklist for creativity, similar indicators. They must indicate high levels of accomplishment in creativity and be endorsed by professional groups, expert review, and so forth. Did I skip something? No. We also look at some basic vendor information. We want to assure that districts will have access to basic information to make sound purchase decisions. So we're looking at overall vendor reliability and basic information about what will be available to districts to support the instrument should they make a purchase. that an assessment meets the various criteria. We're not asking for lengthy descriptions of how the criteria are met. The application process asks you to provide a number of commonly provided documents, such as technical reports, administration manuals, samples, written policies, and so forth. We're not asking that you rewrite all of these things for us. What we want is for you to submit your documentation, and also that you point to pertinent places in your documentation where we can find required evidence. A detailed description of required documentation is found in the general submission requirements of the RFQ, and also in Appendix G, which is an applicant checklist provided for your benefit, so you can go down through and see whether or not you have included everything that we're looking for. The RFQ has a list of pertinent terms. These are three of the ones that are really key to the current RFQ process. We're looking for reliability, validity, and standardization, or does the scoring accurately reflect the test performance of a representative sample of individuals from the population with which the test is intended to be used. This is a screenshot of our vendor submission tool. This is what you will use to guide us through your documentation. The green sections of the information form are the places that you as the vendor will be providing information. The vendor name and assessment go up in the top. There are 2 lines for that. There we have 2 columns where you can choose to apply for one or both of the categories that we're looking for. There's a drop-down box, and you can choose behavioral checklist creative or behavioral checklist in the visual and performing arts. When you have made a selection in the drop-down, then the column below will fill in showing which of the elements are required. Now, because we're only looking for these 2 uses at this time, we've actually simplified this form by eliminating any elements that do not apply to either one of those. So we hope this is going to make it a little simpler for you. Completing the form we want this to be a fairly simple process. The form is not for communicating all kinds of wonderful stuff about what your test can do, looks like. What we want you to do with this form is to just point to the places in your other documentation where we will find criteria. So for instance, here we see 2 validity requirements. The first green column is where you will tell us what document to look in for evidence that you are meeting this criteria. So you might put in there your administration manual or your technical manual or some other study that you've included in your application package, but just the name of the document there. And then the next column is where you'd put the page numbers, so technical report, pages 25 through 26, and then we do provide an additional column to add notes. Again, we're not looking for long explanations here. A typical note might be something like, see also the peer-reviewed journal that we submitted, or this is scheduled for update and whatever. But this is, again, very brief responses. We don't want you to have to rewrite everything that you already have in your documentation. Your submission package should come to us in the form of 1 complete hard copy and 2 digital versions, each on individual USB drives. The application should include all all the information in a single document with consecutive numbering. So we want one big document that has all of these sub-documents in it and begins with page 1, goes all the way through to page 5082 or whatever, and then use that as the key to when you put page numbers into your information form, so that we can find the information easily and make a judgment about whether or not it meets our criteria. The vendor submission tool, we want you to submit that in the form of an Excel document. So just as you get it, as you download it in the Excel format, submit it in that form, and also save it as a PDF, which just provides a more permanent record of what you have actually submitted to us. The deadline is a week from today, July 26th at 5 p.m. That's Eastern Daylight Time. You see the address there, and submit it to my attention, Peggy Sorensen. Just a note, you can you can include links to online material in your application. Just be sure that those links are current and live. There's nothing more frustrating for our readers than to go clicking through and just get to a lot of 404 pages. So make sure that if you're linking to something online, that the link is good. Okay, this is a short description of our review process. We start by training and selecting our reviewers, and at this point we have a number of reviewers who have been through the process a couple of times, so we have a good deep field of people to pull from. The review process includes both technical readers from within the Office of Assessment and gifted education specialists from the Office of Exceptional Children. Basically, they're going to be looking at your submission in terms of yes, no on each of the criteria. They will score either yes, the criteria have been met, or no, we need additional information or clarification. And this is what we'll return to you if you have not passed all of the requirements. We will return to you the score sheet with the explanations for what is still needed or what we didn't understand, and you will have a week to respond. This is our only period. We want to approve people if they are approvable. You know, we're really looking for, we didn't see this, couldn't find this, what you submitted was out of date, or those kinds of explanations. So if you have something, oh yeah, we sent you the wrong one, or sorry, we put the wrong page number, those are the kinds of things that we're looking for in the appeal submissions, and you will have a week to respond to those, and then everything will be reviewed and the final decision rests with ODE leadership. This is the timeline that we're working on. July 26th, next Friday, applications are due. We anticipate the appeals window will be. We anticipate that we will have final approvals to add to our approved list August 15th. You'll notice there's a couple of little asterisks there because when we get into the appeals and the final, you know, this is what we hope to have through, but there are a lot on our end that have to weigh in, and so we have a lot of juggling. Let's look at some questions. So a number of questions were submitted earlier, so let's start with them. Question, how do we get on the list of approved assessments? How long will it take to become an approved assessment? This may have come from somebody who is looking more generally at the RFQ process. ODE approves assessments through an RFQ process. The current RFQ is only for the behavioral checklists, but we may use, again, a comprehensive RFQ process for the 2021 school year assessments. If you are interested in continuing to submit, please make sure that we have up-to-date contact information so that we can send announcements to you when our RFQs post. Question about the behavioral checklists. We want to confirm that the current RFQ is only for the behavioral checklist for gifted assessment. That's correct. We will not be considering other assessments for gifted identification or in other areas at this time. So if you have a wonderful assessment for third grade reading, hang on to it. But we're not going to be looking at it at this time. Another question about behavioral checklists. We'd like to learn more about specific behaviors Ohio wishes to assess as part of this RFQ. Again, this RFQ is seeking behavioral checklists to be used to identify students who are gifted in the areas of visual and performing arts and/or creativity. So just those two areas. This isn't the time. If you're thinking about getting into the field of checklists, you're a little too late to do that before this application process. We're looking for people who already have those. We had a question about norming data. The question came to us as standard 2.4 of the Ohio Common RFQ requires norming data that are less than 10 years old. Is this a requirement for the checklists? In this case, the current RFQ is not identical to the common RFQ. The vendor was apparently looking at the most recent common RFQ. The current one does not have a standard 2.4 that discusses norming data, and the norming requirement has been replaced for the behavioral checklist by a standardization requirement. So consult the current RFQ on our website and also the vendor information tool. We have a question about approval. If a digital version of an approved resource is published at a later date, can it be added to the approved list, or will it have to go through an RFQ process? And the answer is that additional versions or forms of approved tests will have to go through an approval process to be included. We're approving what you submit. If you enhance it with something later, then you're welcome to submit that in a later RFQ. Then again, a general RFQ question, the question of the hour, we get this a lot. How often is there an RFQ for these types of resources? The answer is, to date, we have had 2 common RFQs for the broad 6 test uses over a 2-year period. This current limited RFQ was issued to fill a specific need in an area where we had no approved instruments. Decisions have not yet been made about future RFQs, but if you're interested, please stay up to date with your contact information so that we can notify you when we post. Okay, I'm going to kind of survey my room here, and I think we did have some additional questions. If an instrument on the 1920 approved assessments, do we need to resubmit our assessment? No. Right. And that would not apply to anything that is eligible right now. Oh, yeah. Okay. In terms of the visual and performing arts, there are no currently approved assessments on the list. There is one approved assessment for creativity. that assessment does not need to reapply. They're good. You're there till something else changes. Okay. Do we? Again, I'm surveying the room. Do we have any more questions that have come in? Well, all right. I look forward to hearing from any of you if you want to give us some feedback on this presentation and whether it was helpful or not, or any other general things. Feel free to send me an email. I'm at Peggy, P-E-G-G-Y, Sorensen, S-O-R-E-N-S-E-N, at education.ohio.gov. You can also submit questions and comments through state tests at education.ohio.gov. And we thank you for spending some time with us today.